Hey up everyone, welcome to Yarkshire Gamers, Reet Wargames podcast and episode 7, and very shortly we'll be going to our interview with today's guest Nick Skinner from Two Fat Lardies, somebody who will need no introduction at all. Just before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping as normal, not too much today, as the interview's longer than normal, so I want to try and keep it around 2 hours tops. Just so the last episode 6 with Fraser from Von Ketteringham has just overtaken the most number of downloads in the first week, overtaking Mark Freeth's episode. So well done to VK, and well done to VK particularly, Fraser, because we talked at the end of that episode, if you listened, about figures that I would like to paint that I didn't have already, and I woke up the following morning. It's as if Fraser had hypnotised me, because I woke up the following morning and bought the figures that I was talking about. So I am now the proud owner of a 36 figure 28mm battalion, St Patrick's Battalion from the Italian Wars of Independence, and it's already sparked off. I've converted some ACW Zouaves I've had lying around for a long time with some metal heads from Steve Barber Models. So I've got some Papal Zouaves now, and I've just ordered some Garibaldi troops. So Fraser, I think you owe Gringo 40 some money, mate, because they're getting some orders going their way, which is great. And thanks very much for that question, Fraser. It was a brilliant one, a really good one. So just to announce, before we start, we've got a major sponsorship deal now. With an international airline, Yorkshire Airlines, I'm very proud to say, will be sponsoring this podcast from now on, and they've done an advert, and that advert will feature in between part ones and part two of today's show. So if you need to go up and away, and you fancy flying from Leeds to Doncaster, or maybe to Hull, then Yorkshire Airlines is the airline for you. But more of that later. Let's get on with our interview. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Yorkshire Gamers Reet Big War Games podcast and episode 7. And today's guest, we enter the world of war games Glitterati for the very first time. I've pulled the red carpet from the bottom of my ferret's cage, I've given it a shake, and I've rolled it out for this lad. An award-winning member of what many people say is the best-looking trio since Bananarama. He is no doubt proudly sporting his recent Caesars Winners Medal of the Oddcast. He is many things to many people. He is John Lennon to Rich Clark's Paul McCartney. He is a slayer of black puddings. He is an advocate of the avocado. He is a connoisseur of the cooking lager. He is a judger of breakfasts. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Nick Skinner.
Hey up, Ken. Where hast thou been since I saw thee?
Oh, hey. We'll be singing along to the theme tune in a minute.
Do you know what? I've been walking around my house for the last few weeks whistling that.
Have you?
Ilkley Moorbar Tat. It's a great tune, isn't it?
It is brilliant. Absolutely. There was very few tunes that I could have picked for a theme tune. And I'd already used the last of the summer wine for YouTube. So I thought, let's have a go at that. So it's worked then, has it?
Yeah, it has. Well, it's almost like a national anthem, isn't it? In fact, I'm sure when Yorkshire gets its independence, that will be the national anthem of Yorkshire.
It will be, and as I think I said in the last couple of podcasts ago, when we voted for Brexit, we actually thought we were leaving England. We're quite surprised that it was something to do with somewhere called Europe, which is south of Sheffield, I think.
Somewhere south of Sheffield.
You
stay out there. We'll look after the rest of it. You stay up there.
Yeah, we'll manage. So, we had a little chat before we started, Nick, and I think it's well known you've done quite a few podcasts in the past, and most of them give you a little bit of an introduction, but a little bit different on Yorkshire Gamer, and you are aware of this, that we're just going to do 4 minutes. You've got 4 minutes of an introduction, and after about 3.5 minutes, you'll hear the countdown music, and if you just rattle on for too long, then D.I. Regan from the Sweeney will tell you to shut it. So are you happy with the rules for that, mate?
I'm happy with the rules. I've written a list, and we can play a bit of war game. We can play a bit of Wargamers bingo on the way.
Oh, fantastic!
You can tick them off as we go. All the things that apply to you, you can tick off.
Oh, that's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. So I'll just say 3, 2, 1, go, and I've got my little timer here, and we're ready. So 3, 2, 1, off you go, Nick Skinner.
Right, okay, so I'm going to start in the 1970s. So that's the first one you can tick off. I'm going to start with war films on TV every weekend and every holiday.
Ka-ching.
We've got Warlord comic, Victor comic, Battle Action comic, but not 2000 AD. I wasn't into 2000 AD whatsoever, which I think says something about me, and I've got a real history bent in my wargaming. Commando comics,
oh yes,
1/32 scale airfix soldiers, Matchbox and airfix kits. You know, when you're big enough to get some pocket money.
Yep.
I remember painting some 1/32 scale airfix toy soldiers that my big brother had. Japanese they were.
Nice.
Painted them in bright green.
Yep.
Bright green enamels, and 2 days later, there's no paint left on them. You know how it goes; it all just flakes off. 1/72 scale HO00, whatever HO00 was. I still don't know what HO00 is. I've really never understood scales. Let me see. Action Man storybooks. I'm going to ring a bell.
Ooh,
so that's something about stories.
One.
Yeah, something about stories there, which is key for me in wargaming. So we've got all the airfix stuff, coastal defense set, gun emplacement, pontoon bridge, military modeling, airfix Napoleonics. So, which is the first time that you can get to do big battles on your mate's floor. We were playing big games with airfix plastic Napoleons. And games fought over 2 to 3 days, with loads of plastic.
Oh, now we're talking.
We used to go to local Woolworths and buy them all. So then a couple of things, I guess, from that, a few dings coming along now, big things in the term of dings. So first of all, finding a book in the school library called The War Game. Right, key moment in my wargaming history. Book put together, I think it was edited by, was it Charles Grant? I've got it here actually, because I always have it on a podcast that's about wargaming. That was really essential for me, really exciting. Donald Featherston, Bruce Quarry, okay, all these kind of dings that everybody will recognise. Then I went to St Albans War Games Club, which absolutely was if this was Big Ben, it would be ding, 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 like nobody's business. Yeah. Coincided with the release of Miniature War Games as a magazine.
Yep.
There was a guy at St Albans called Bill McNally, who was another ding. Yeah. He was the guy who first let us know that it was okay to write your own rules. And St Albans was a real hotbed in those days for that kind of thing. So where I met Richard, he's not going to get a ding on the bell. And then we were buying sort of, metal figures, loads of periods, war game ballistic we were in the 1990s. Read a book called The Sharp End of War by John Ellis, okay, which is about psychology of warfare, which gets me into the kind of angle on the history that I like to take. Then we got, I guess Richard and I went into Two Fat Lardies. I guess you're going to want to talk about that at some point, and a bit of family history, which ties into If the Lord Spares Us rules and the rules that came out from that. And doing some battlefield walking, big games with Paddy Griffiths, Kriegspiel, and of course IBSM, Bag the Hun, Kiss Me Hardy, Sharp Practice, Chain of Command, the Oddcast, and generally drinking beer all over the world is what we're trying to do. I think have a pint with war gamers wherever they are, and build a great community where people can have fun and enjoy themselves. How's that?
That is absolutely fantastic, and you are bang on 30 seconds away from it starting. Oh, there it goes now.
Okay, well, I'll talk about Sid for a few seconds if you like, because Sid would like to be spoken about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So just on the end there, because he likes to have top billing, we've got, of course, a great friendship with our friend Sydney Roundwood. Yep. Hello, Sid, if you're listening.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that. That was a superb response to the 4-minute challenge, I have to say. Thank you very much for that. I think you've the way you've done that is really good, because that kind of brings out the similarity that a lot of us have. I'm in my mid-50s. I was a kid in the 70s and early 80s, and that's exactly what I did. And I think it's exactly what a lot of people did on podcasts as well, when you listen into them. The club that you went to where you met Rich, is that the club that you still go to now?
So we still go, it still meets in the same place that it met 35 years ago, whatever it was, and some of the guys are still there who were there then. So it was the St Albans Club. I don't know if you remember, but when Miniature Wargames first came out, there was a series of articles in there by a guy whose first name escapes me, but his second name was Gosling. And I know that because he was I think the son of one of my teachers at school. And he lived in St Albans, and he used to write about the St Albans Wargame Club, and that's how I became aware of it. But it turns out that St Albans Wargame Club was not the one that I ended up going to. I went to one that I think was advertised in the back of one of the magazines. And so I turned up there with my mates and walked into the door, and another piece of shared history, I suspect. You walk in the door, you open into a room where they've got a big table set out with a fantastic game, and I think it was actually one that Richard was running, but it was like a medieval commando raid. So there was 28mm Essex miniatures, 28mm ships that I think Richard had built or somebody had built, and it just looked tremendous. And I think I was 16 when I walked in the door, and I just thought, wow, this was a real penny dropping, jaw dropping moment. And it's shaped me ever since. And we used to, every week it used to meet, and it absolutely fired me into action. My wargaming after I went to St Albans just went absolutely ballistic.
And is it still, do you get new members coming in every now and again, or are you holding and greying?
Yeah, it's quite odd really, because these days it's really just our playtesting club. So if you go to that group, if you turn up at that club, then all you'll get to do is play the same game with us week after week after week, while we playtest something. And that's got an appeal to some people, but not to everybody. So we've got a group of regulars that turn up and help us chew over some ideas. And it may be that we only play a game for an hour, and then we'll spend the rest of the evening talking about what differences we need to make and what worked and what didn't work, etc. So in terms of pure war game, if you want to turn up and have a pure game from start to finish and have a different one every week, it's not the place to go. But if you want to join in some creative thinking, then I guess that's the place to be.
And is it a room that you hire out somewhere, or is it your own premises?
It's a room in a local community club. So I've got no idea how big the room is, but if you used all the tables in there, and it used to be something that we did frequently in the old days, was have as many tables as we can for the biggest table setup we could find. I used to run big Vietnam search and destroy games, and we'd have something like a 30-foot table. I remember the tables were 2.5 foot by 6 foot. So we used to get as many of those as we could, including nicking them from all the other rooms. And just having. I remember trying to work out. I remember sketching out on square paper. How big could we possibly make this table, and yet still allow people to reach the center of it? Or did we have to take the center table out and have 60-year-old blokes crawling around on their hands and knees under the table? Because when you're 20 years old, you think that's hilarious.
Well, I think width of table is definitely connected to average age of players. When we did Jutland, we had an 8-foot wide table, and luckily for all of us, the main fleets are quite separated during the battle, so you only have to reach in 3 or 4 feet. But if there was a big destroyer action in the middle, you had to get the tall, lanky kids to move the ships in the middle.
Well, I think that's where Richard came in handy, because of course he's 6'4" or whatever he is. He's got a longer reach than most people.
He's a big lad, isn't he? One of the things that you did that came out in your 4 minutes, and I think it's a big thing for many war gamers, but probably we don't really talk about that much, is friendship. How long ago was it when you bumped into those guys at St Albans, and you're still friends with them today?
I think I was 16, which must make it 36 years ago. Okay, so that's a long time, isn't it? That's a long time to know anybody.
Yeah, you don't quite realise how much of your life you share with your Wargames friends, especially if you're lucky enough to be within a group. And it normally is, you'll separate into groups of 5 or 6 or 7 that all have a similar sense of humour, all have a similar type of game that they want to play, and your friendship builds from there. And of course,
we went through the stage of as most clubs do. People will rotate, put on different games. We used scenario-driven games most of the time, which meant that one person would design the scenario, design the table, bring their armies along. And there were sort of 3 or 4 of us, I guess, at St Albans that would do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they're the guys that generally are still involved now.
So is your wargaming driven by the rules that Lardies are producing at that time, or do you have your own favourite periods?
Nowadays, it's totally driven by what we're working on, and we will tend to play to death whatever it is we're working on. So, as you imagine, we've had quite a number of rule sets come out in the last 10 years or so. So we will play them to death. And then when they're published, funnily enough, we tend to play them least, because we get them to the point when they're published. And then when they're published, we're moving on to the next thing. Yeah. So exactly at the point when people are playing the games that are published, we've started to go on to the next thing. It doesn't always work like that. Yeah. Which is why it's really nice when we go to the shows, etc., and we take the game and we play it, because it gives us a chance to go back and connect to it. And we get lots of stick. Let's be honest about it. We get lots of stick for not knowing our own rules, and the reason I say that is the reason that I always say about that is that that's because we spend so long playing so many different versions of them. Yeah. But the one finally gets out there is the one that we probably play the least. Yeah. So that's my excuse on that. Nothing to do with too much alcohol or anything like that.
No, because that never blurs the lines, does it?
No, never.
So what's your favourite, if you didn't have to develop a rule set, what would you pick as your favourite periods?
So this is interesting, because I've tried to consolidate my own figure collection over the years, because I'm running out of storage space. So I'm consolidating into World War II and Napoleonics. And then after that, I'm into aerial gaming and naval gaming. So Napoleonic naval and World War II, aerial dogfighting principally. The great thing about that is these days, if you're using, 1/600 tends to be the scale of choice for that. Takes up no room whatsoever. I've still got lots of big armies for I ain't been shot mum, 15mm World War II. So World War II for me is 28mm and 15mm. And Napoleonics is principally 28mm. In fact, it's only 28mm. And what else have I got lots of? World War I, 15mm for if the Lord spares us. An army that was built up at the time when there were no World War I, or very few World War I 15mm Middle East figures. And that takes up probably 4 or 5 trays in my Bisley cabinets, I think. So yeah, I guess those are my main ones that I would go to.
And do you have a gaming space at home, or is everything done away from home?
No, I do everything away from home. I don't have any space really. I have the garage where all my stuff, I try to get all my stuff in there. Yeah. The biggest part of my collection really is books. Actually, I've got more books than anything else. Yeah. And if you looked at me from the outside and said, "What does this guy collect?" You'd say he collects history books, because the house is just stuffed full of them. And I can never resist one. I'm always wanting to know that I've got access to that little bit of extra information.
And that's a good thing for a rule writer, I would suggest.
Well, I think it's pretty poor if somebody comes up to you and points something out and you say, "You know what? I've never read that. I wasn't aware of it." Yeah. Because if somebody is preparing a set of rules, I'd expect them to have done the research.
Oh, so definitely. One of the things I speak to with people about in this part of the podcast is the Venn diagram of wargaming. Do you remember the old Venn diagrams from school?
I do.
And each wargamer, I've tried to break it down into 4 sections, and each of them will overlap in different ways, and that defines our wargaming personality, if you like. And those areas are wargamer, painter, collector, and historian. And as I always tell my guests, I'm more painter, collector, historian is where I fit. And the game inside of it, although I enjoy it, if I took it away, I would still paint and collect. So I'm always interested in how people sort of see themselves in that setup.
It's a really good question. And so I would say, what were they? Painter, collector, historian,
wargamer.
Yeah. So, okay. So probably in terms of time spent, painting, researcher, collector, wargamer, and I'd throw rule writer in there somewhere because I don't know where it fits in those. But you've got to do all four of those to do a bit of that.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, you've surprised me with putting painter first.
I'm slow.
Is that your excuse? Are you sticking with that one?
I'm slow. I'm slow. I've got lots of stuff. I've got lots of collections. I've got God knows how many tanks I've got, and a lot of them spend a lot of time in my own collection.
Yeah.
And only half of them. I've done a lot of stuff in lockdown that hasn't been anywhere.
Yeah.
Like most of us have.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I didn't expect that. You've surprised me there, Nick.
Well, that's a good thing then.
No, it's brilliant. I like it because I think it defines very much where we sit in our gaming experience and what we're looking for from a game. And me being drawn to the bigger game is down to that collecting and painting. So I've got these massive collections of figures. What am I going to do with them? And sometimes it's just lying them out on the table and going, I've done all right there, lad. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, I think there's something quite therapeutic about painting, which I find really relaxing.
Yeah,
I'd love to find more time to play actual games.
Yeah,
and I guess we go through phases of that. That's the thing. We sometimes game a lot, and sometimes we have long periods without being able to get together. So COVID has been difficult, obviously, but we've been doing online games. Although I've not been able to run any from here, I've been involved in playing.
No, that's worked well for people, and I know from a number of people I've spoken to, the painting side of it, and especially for me, I've got quite a difficult job, and it just lets me zone out. I come home and I can paint, and it's like having it's not a free therapist, is it? Because you're paying for all those figures, but it's a discount therapist is probably the best way. So just while we're talking during the introduction, I'd like to just speak to you about publishing rules and just chat about how it happened for you, because I think many people listening will have knocked up a set of rules on the back of a beer mat at some stage during their life, and it's a huge jump from that let's do -1 if they're behind a bush to here's a set of rules. So how did you go from that interest in rule writing to actually getting something published?
Yeah, so as I said, at St Albans we had a real culture of the do your own thing, which was led by a guy called Bill McNally, who's I think based up now in Cheshire, but he was very, very instrumental in the St Albans club. He used his own rules for most of the games that we played, had very big armies of plastic Napoleonics and plastic everything Bill had.
Yeah.
Extensive collection, very inspiring man. And I guess he made it clear that we could do our own thing. So we used to buy rules and play rules, but we'd always adapt them. And then I think, I don't know when it would have been, in the late 1990s probably, we went back to playing some Vietnam rules that we used to play a lot of, and we hadn't played for a while, and we went back to them. I guess when we played them again, we just suddenly felt, you know what, these are not giving us the game that we want. They're not giving us the feel that we want, and they're not giving us the command decisions that we want. And I think the reason for that was that we'd invested much more in the history and in the in the kind of the experience of I was more into the psychology of the warfare at that time. How how are commanders making their decisions and what's influencing them. And I wasn't getting that feeling during those games. So we just sat there after one game at Richard and I, and we knocked up some ideas, wrote them down in the same way as many, many thousands of people have done, I suspect, and create our own set of rules, really. And then I can't remember now how we got to send them out. I think word must have spread in some way that we'd written these set of rules. And so Richard started sending them out. And, then people started saying, well, can I buy some off you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this, I can't truly remember the detail of it because it's so long ago. But then we kind of realized, well, actually, we could sell some of these and people are interested in selling them. So, okay, well, let's sell some. And we sold them. Richard used to print them off and bind them with a spiral binding. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And send them out initially, more for play testing than anything else. But then, yeah, people started buying them. People said, you know what, you should sell these properly. They're really good. And people said, what else have you got? Have you got anything else? We said, well, we've got, some ideas about this and that. So before you know it, you're starting to put together a little portfolio of things. And we were just lucky. I think we hit a nerve. I like to think the rules were different. I think they took a different approach to many of the rules that were around at that time. For instance, I Ain't Been Shot, Mum. When you were shooting at your enemy, you had to make an adjudication whether it was a good shot, a poor shot, or an okay shot. And that's the kind of trust-based decision that most war games didn't use at that time. And we introduced, of course, we didn't introduce it, but we incorporated friction into those rules, which meant that people either loved them or hate them. They're a bit of Marmite. Some people thought it took away their decisions, and some people thought it actually gave them the right kind of decision. And we started to get really good feedback from people who knew what they were talking about. And that made us feel really good, I guess. So that kind of fueled us to do more, and ever has been that way, I think.
So roughly when were those first sets sent out, do you think?
So next year we are... Two Fat Lardies is 20 next year. Ooh. So it must have been 2002 that we did that. I think that's right. If it's not then, that's our official birthday anyway.
And what was the sort of level of production on those very first ones that went out? You've talked about the spiral binding.
Yeah, well, we were... let's not talk about typos or anything like that. They were home produced.
Yeah.
But actually, in the day, of course, they were black and white. Everything was black and white in those days. I think we had a color. We had a color photo of a crocodile, a Churchill crocodile tank on the front, I think, as I remember from one of the first versions. So production quality was low, but it was a cottage industry in those days.
Yeah, and I think there's a big change there from how you've started off, and it's probably similar to how bands would have started in those days. They would play the pubs and clubs and build up an audience and eventually get to selling out Wembley Stadium. Whereas today, they just grab Dave and Sonia from down the Working Men's Club, bang a backing track on, do a bit of auto-tune, and so long as they look the business, they sell millions. Because there's lots of stuff that comes out rule-wise today. And I'm not going to name names because I'm just going to get myself into trouble again. But there's a lot of style. There's a lot of 200 pages, glossy colour, and then you get into the rules, and you're kind of disappointed with what's there, what the content is. Do you find that yourself? Do you buy other sets of rules, or do you just ignore everyone?
I don't have the time, to be honest. I mean, I've seen many. Do I buy some? Do you know, I probably don't buy that many. I don't buy many sets of rules at all. What I do is I look around board games for inspiration. Yeah, I play games with other people. I like to play other games where we can. Although generally people, want to play, if they'll come along and show us how to play, one of your games. So I don't get to play other games that often, but I like to. I think that, I don't know, I think that some gamers that they like to collect rules. Some people buy every set of rules out, stimulates their thinking. They like to compare information, whatever floats their boat, really. And I guess the production standards on the rules have gone through the roof now. And like their rules to be glossy.
Yeah.
Look at, this was, so if the Lord spares us, I've got a copy of this here. This was one of our earlier sets. In fact, this says 2005, but even by 2005, we were at black and white content, staple bound. No, it's got color content. It's got a couple of bits of color in there. And it's kind of survived okay, glossy cover. These days, I guess we've moved on to some degree from that, but it's the commercial aspects of rules are tricky. So you will buy one set of rules, and for I don't know, 20 quid, whatever it is, and then you'll go and spend 400 quid on figures. So it's the rules are still the kind of poor side of the hobby in that regard. I don't think anybody's ever going to retire as a millionaire from writing rules.
No, very true indeed. And I think when you started to write rules, I think there's a lot of encouragement or ability to freestyle, if you like, whereas maybe today people coming from Games Workshop into historical tend to be very restricted, because when you go into Games Workshop, if you say, well, what about if we had a card activated system, you're going to get chucked out of the shop, aren't you? So did you feel at the time that it was a creative experience, a creative environment that you were in?
It's quite a weird feeling when you create something and then put it out there into the real world, because people will come back and tell you that you got something wrong. Well, okay, that's fair. Yeah. Maybe I have got something wrong. I don't claim to be the expert on everything. And then people would often say to us, I think they used to think that our rules were quite chatty in their style, and weren't suitable for competition gaming because there was too much ambiguity. Yeah. And I'd say, well, hooray for that. I don't want it any other way. Yeah. And people would come to us for a rule with a rule query. And they would say, I've got a local workaround, which is to do this. And we'd say, yeah, okay, fine. You do what you want with it. They're your rules to play the game that you want to. And if it works for you to tweak this or tweak that, or that's absolutely fine by us. We're really happy to take the idea and for you to use it as a toolbox for you to get the game that you want out of it. And we've kept that. We kept that all the way through. I think now, though, we are smarter as rule writers. Yeah. I mean, Richard in particular has focused, 100% of his career on this. And the production now and the content that we have now and the thoroughness of what's there is much different to what it was 20 years ago. But you'd expect that, right? Yeah. It's. But yeah, people play them in different ways, and I just like to hear people have fun about them. Really, it's like when you with the Little Sue. I love reading that. I love seeing that, and I'll bet you now you don't play them as they're written. I would imagine that you've tweaked them as well, so that's fine. Yeah, don't have a problem with that.
No, that's good. That's good to hear. Just before we move on then to the second section, what's your current project in wargaming? I've noticed some Mexicans popping up on Twitter. Is that what's that for?
It's because I've been doing so much World War II in the last few years that I wanted something a bit different, but I wanted something that I could do that felt manageable and was a bit of fun. Yeah. There was an article that Colin Murray wrote, Scottish guy Colin Murray. Hello, Colin, in Lard magazine. We do an annual magazine, comes out near Christmas time. And he wrote an article in there on the filibusters. So in America, going south and south of the Rio Grande and causing some trouble. And it just stimulated me into thinking about the Alamo. I've always been a huge John Wayne fan. Love the film The Alamo. A lot of my historical interests are sort of Hollywood centered initially. And I just thought they would be fun to do. So I've got some figures from Boot Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with Boot Hill miniatures. 28 mil. They are really, really lovely sculpts. And Nick Futter, who runs that, is a top class guy as well, and they're a beautiful range. So I've only got, I don't know, how many have I got? Enough for a sharp practice, which is about 50 aside. Yeah. And I haven't done an action with them yet because I've only painted the Mexicans. I haven't started on the Texians yet. Yeah. And in fact, I've got some downstairs that are in work in progress, shall we say?
Oh, excellent!
That's my current project.
Brilliant. And I did write something down that I forgot to ask you before we move on. And that was when you brought those first sets of rules out, and we'll talk later on about how different lardy sets of rules are to normal sets of rules. Was it quite an avalanche of criticism to start with? Did you get a lot of, what the bloody hell's this, lad?
Yeah, we did. We got quite a lot of that, especially around the tea break card that was in Shop Mum. So it's card driven, and when the tea break card comes out, that's it. You reshuffle the pack and off you go again. Yeah. And of course, lots of people got very upset that they had units that potentially didn't get to move in that turn. And so we had lots of pushback about that. Now, interestingly enough, 20 years on, I think that kind of friction of movement is pretty much established. People don't necessarily expect to do an I go, you go kind of activity. But at the time that we got lots of pushback about that, it was interesting. And we did have also some real evangelists, some people who picked it up and sort of said, behold, the new, this is the greatest. Some real evangelists that ran with it really, really strongly, and gathered some energy around it as well. So it's, that's, and I guess that's how communities grow, isn't it? From these people that say, look at this, I've got this, I really love it. Let's play it together. And what do you think? And then they go and buy it, and it kind of goes on from there, which is really how I guess we've grown. So we did get some pushback. We got pushback about the friction idea. We got pushback about the chatty style. And that we were okay with all of that, because we said, look, we're just doing this for a laugh. If you don't want it, you don't have to buy it. And I think that's been our attitude all the way through. Really, we've been enjoying ourselves, and we've had a fantastic laugh. I mean, we've been to places and done things that we wouldn't have otherwise done as wargamers, and we've had a jolly good giggle doing it. And the whole thing has been super.
That's the best way to game. Anyway, shape or form. The laughs that we have here are with friends and at shows. It's what it's all about. It is definitely what it's all about. And over time, then, have people got used to what to expect from a set of Lardy's rules, and there's less of that pushback to, because friction is now in most games. There'll be some method of, if it's not card activation, it'll be dice activation or dice roll for initiative, and people will move in initiative order. It seems to have become the norm, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's important to say that I don't think we invented any of these things, but we embraced them and used them. And I think that you do see them more often now. Yeah. So, which is great to see. So remind me again, what was the question? I
was just talking. Yeah, it was. I was kind of saying, has that reaction to the friction in your rules dissipated over time? Are people more?
Oh, that's right. You're asking. Yeah, sorry. I've literally, honestly, folks, I've only had an inch of beer. Truly. So I think there appears to be a Lardy style now. People say these rules are very much in the Lardy style. Yeah. So, and they've created that definition for themselves. I'm not quite sure that we set out to define a Lardy style as such. Yeah. But I'm great that people tell us we've got one. So it's and I guess that is around the we like things to be unpredictable, not random, but unpredictable. So we don't like sort of standard 6-inch moves. We don't like it when we have a set I go, you go. We don't like things where we can look at the game and predict exactly where it will be in 3 turns' time. Yeah. So if that's a Lardy thing, then that's great, because I think all games that are too predictable are not such fun. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Nick. That's great introduction there. And we'll just take a short break for a message from our advertisers, and then we'll be back for chat on big games in a second.
On your holes. Don't know who to fly with? Then why don't you go up and away with Yorkshire Airlines? Our Air Dorises will always give you the warmest of welcomes.
What my bloody feet?
Our flight crew are the very best.
This is Captain Boycott speaking. During the flight, we'll be flying at whatever height I like for as long as I bloody like, because I'm captain, right?
And your safety is our concern.
Right, you lot. Shut up, belt up, And if you can't see the bloody exits, you must be bloody blind.
Yorkshire Airlines, departing Leeds International Airstrip, touching down 20 minutes later at Leeds International Airstrip. Because if it's outside Yorkshire, it's not worth bloody visiting.
I hope you enjoyed that new advert from Yorkshire Airlines. There'll be plenty more Yorkshire-related adverts coming up during the course of this series. And the second part of the show, for the regular listeners, they will know we have a chat about big games. And some of you will be thinking, oh, Nick Skinner, he does them big skirmish games for two fat lardies. What's he going to tell us about big games? And I think this is the interesting part. This is why we get people on the show to talk about different things. So, what does a big game mean to you, Nick? What do you think of a big game?
Well, I guess a big game for me, if somebody asked me about a game and I explained to them what they're doing and they said, oh, that's a big game, then that is a good enough definition. So for me, that could be a game in terms of, it could be size of table. They could walk in the door and say, "Wow, look at that!" Or it could be the number of players that you've got engaged at any one time. Or it could be that you've got a series of games that tie together into a campaign sequence, which is a big game from start to finish. Yeah. So I'm going to jump under whatever definition of big that most suits me whenever I need to jump under it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense because trying to define it gets you into trouble, I've found.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yep.
And there's certainly no intention. There's certainly no intention for that. And I found it interesting during these chats to talk about big games with people because everyone's had a bit of a different definition. So did you ever go to the Wargames Holiday Centre? Was that something you ever did?
No, I never went there. I know guys who did, and it's interesting, isn't it, that I was listening to your podcast about the impact that had on people. Without doubt, those big games, when Peter Gilder was running it, those games looked stunning. And I can imagine that if I'd walked in there, I would have had exactly that same response because they're sensational looking games. The tables look fantastic. Yeah. They must have been great things to be involved with.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they were. I've said it many times, that first experience, I used to do a bit of painting for them. And my first experience walking in there with my 4 battalions of French infantry, 36 figures a piece, me thinking, my God, I've done loads. And you get there and it was Jerry Elliott at the time who was running it. And he took them, give me a check and then put them onto this shelf and they just disappeared. And it's like that. Just amazing, absolutely amazing, and I'm sure that's had it has had a massive effect, quite clearly. Have you taken part in big games? And have you done big weekend games?
Yeah, we've done plenty of those. Where can I start? I think my favourite one that we did because it meant more to me at the time. We refought Trafalgar, which is a pretty big game. So the largest. Yeah. One of the largest naval action of its time, sort of 60 ships, Langton models. We did it we did it over 2 tables. So it was so big, we couldn't get it on one table. What we decided was we do the northern half of the action. So you've got Nelson's column, in the truest sense of the word, Nelson's attacking line of ships, pushing into the front part of the French fleet. We had that on one table. And then on the other table, we had Collingwood's southern column pushing in, and crossing there, and we refought Trafalgar. We did it in 2005 to mark the anniversary of Trafalgar as well. We had guys coming up, and I think we had actually that weekend we had a big games weekend. We had Trafalgar being played in one room with using Kiss Me Hardy on Napoleonic naval rules, and in the other room we had Austerlitz being played with Le Feu Sacré, which is also a sort of core level divisional war game that Darren Green wrote for us. One of our very, very early sets. So we had I think we had a big group of guys come up from all over the country. It's quite early in the days of lard in those days. And we had am I allowed to say every word, Ken, or is that going to be
no there? crack on.
So we had a twat in the hat contest, which was we encouraged people to make the most ridiculous Napoleonic French hat or French hat that they could, or any Napoleonic hat. And the great thing was that we had, I think of the guys who came, more than half of them took part in this, and they'd made these ludicrous hats, absolutely ridiculous hats. Such a giggle. I've still got the photos, actually. I must share them to embarrass them further. So we had that. It was just a really good fun day. We had, I don't know how many guys there were, 20 odd, something like that, which was, which were big for us at that time. And we refought in the Trafalgar, and we refought it at pretty much 1-to-1 time. So, in the real battle took about 5 hours, and our game took about the same length of time, with a pretty similar outcome, it has to be said.
Yeah.
And that was really, really good. One of the biggest games we'd done in terms of, I guess, that you wouldn't necessarily, weren't thousands and thousands of figures on the table, but it was a big game. And we've done many other lard days which were on that same vein. So we did Stalingrad, for instance. We refought Stalingrad using a big E-shaped table.
Yeah.
So we had, if you imagine laying the letter E on its back. So you've got the flat bits, and then you've got 3 arms coming out. And we had the Germans were advancing up each arm. So we basically had three separate actions being fought as they moved their way up the arm, and the Russians were controlling the long part of the E. So the Russians were able to marshal some of their troops, and get them to the table that they needed them. So there's a real resource management part of the game as well. That was, I think that was the second year we had a big games day at Lard Island, and then the third year we did Crete. So we refought actions. Now this time we did a big game, but we did it over 8 tables. 8 tables, something like that. So we took historical scenarios from all around the invasion of Crete, and we played out all of them in the one go, and then said, well, what happened there, what happened there, what happened there, and kind of declare an overall outcome from that. So these were games played using I Ain't Been Shot Mum, which was a company level rule set at that time. In terms of massive games of sort of big Napoleonics or whatever, we did a Waterloo refight last year it was actually last year, a couple of years ago, my 50th birthday. Somehow I've managed to get to 50. Well, full stop. Somehow I've managed to get to 50. And somehow I'd managed to get to 50 and never actually played a Waterloo, never refought Waterloo.
Oh, yeah.
So I said to the guys, we've got to rectify this. We need to do a refight at Waterloo. So we did one using Le Fossac. We did it using General Darmé. We did it using General Darmé with Dave Brown.
Yeah.
Dave Brown came and we played that, and that was sensational. Really, really good. But, it was a big table, but actually not that big. I think it was probably 8 foot by 6 foot, and we used 15 mil. And it was really fun to do that. With again, I think we had 12 or so guys play the game, go out and have a few beers and a curry afterwards, which is very much our model. It's very much our modus operandi. So I think they count as big. And then you've got on the other side of things the Lard days, which are big collections of many games. So they are big by definition. Somebody would walk in and say, "Wow, that's for me. That fits under one of my definitions of big." And then I guess you go to the other end of the scale and you look at some of the Kriegspiel games that we've done. So I was very lucky to do some Kriegspiel games with the late and very great Paddy Griffith. And Paddy ran through the Imperial War Museum at Duxford some big Kriegspiel games, including Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Norway, the invasion of Crete. And these were done as big exercises with 50 players and a team of umpires of about 20 umpires, so 70 people working together to create a mega Kriegspiel. And people would say, oh yeah, that's big. But there wasn't a single figure involved in that. No toy soldiers at all. But a fascinating insight into what could have happened or what might have happened, in those historical scenarios. And Paddy was an expert at that friction, that thing not quite going to plan or not quite working out the way you wanted it. So I think, do they count as big? You tell me. You're the adjudicator.
Am I the adjudicator? Well, no. I'm happy for people to have different styles of big games. And if we go back to the Venn diagram of wargaming that I spoke about in the first section, then the way my mind works and the way that first experience of the massive games at the Wargames holiday centres, a big game, if somebody says big game to me, I think huge table, thousands and thousands of figures, and to be honest, I could just sit there like a fish tank. I could just sit there and just look. But then there are other people who have the gaming aspect, and I think that's very much with the Kriegspiel, the mental challenge of moving those tiny blocks of wood round, and my brain just goes, they're not painted, can I? Or they might be painted with like a little, they'll have like the cavalry symbol or whatever. I'm happy with lots of definitions for big games, because I just want people to enjoy what they're doing at the end of the day. And then the people who listen to this will probably be the 20-foot table, 3,028mm figure types like me, and that's great. That's great. But then other people... That's
great, and I think... Well, I was going to say that they're great. What really impresses me about games is if they're big and engaging.
Yes.
So if engagement for you means you're happy to just watch and just absorb with your eyes this fantastic spectacle before you, then that's great. Yeah. For me, a game's also got to engage in terms of getting an outcome or telling the story of that battle. So if you're able to do that as well in a big game, then absolutely brilliant. And look at some of the things that again, different scale. You go right down to 2 mil. You should get Mark Backhouse on here, Ken. I don't know if it's on your list, but I do know he's cheap. So
that's what I like to hear.
And he will talk to you about his 2 mil gaming that he's doing.
Yeah, him and Sydney are having a crack at it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, absolutely. And they're really interesting and fascinating. And they're quite, obviously you can command a big game on your coffee table from that perspective. So for me, it's got to be engaging. And if big games, I've had experience of big games that are not engaging. I've had experience of big games where I've been the commander on the left flank and the attacker's gone in on the right flank, and I'm sitting there scratching my backside. And it's great to watch that, but you kind of think, oh, I'd like to have had more to do there. And I don't mind doing that occasionally, but I don't want to be the guy who gets stuck with that every week. Yeah. So, it's,
I think, I think a lot of big games is about how they're run. And a lot of people's negative experience with big games are with badly run big games. And if you come here to Yorkshire Gamer, you're not going to leave that door until you've wet yourself a couple of times with laughing, because that's the way that we like to game here. We've all got our little incontinence pads for when somebody cracks a joke or whatever, and everyone is involved, even if we're playing a card activated system, which can be a little bit slow for a big game. We're still laughing and joking, and Ian, one of our mates, will talk about the railways for 5 minutes, and we'll throw stuff at him to shut him up. There'll be trees thrown across the table at him just to shut him up. And I think it's the enjoyment. And I think if you've had a bad experience with a big game, I mean, you'll have seen those games at shows where everyone's had the back to their audience and nobody's talking to the crowd.
Well, that's something we are really passionate about. We're really passionate about engaging. Whenever we go to show, I like to think that we engage as many people as we can. I don't know if you've been to our tables at the, we go around the show. We go around the show circuit, and we like to make our games as engaging as possible. We like people to come, have some fun, enjoy the game. Yes, we hope they look good, but actually we don't spend, we don't blow a massive budget on terrain. Yeah. And in fact, the one time we did blow all of Sydney's creative talents on the terrain game is one of the games that famously never won an award. We don't measure our games on their success of winning awards, but the irony is that the one year that we took a game to Crisis in Antwerp with Sydney's professional, fantastically built terrain was the one year we came back without any silverware, which was so funny. And the next year we did a I think it was a winter war game with a white bed sheet, and completely embarrassed by having a really engaging game just with a bed sheet, which is nice work if you can get it. So I think it's got to be engaging, hasn't it? Whatever size it is.
Yeah, and you've got to have people involved. You've got to have. It helps to have big personalities as well, like Rich, doesn't it? Who drive on people. And if you do get people, I've spoke to people who are not negative about a big game, but I've kind of said, "Oh, I don't like it." And when I've delved down into it, they've been that guy at the end of the table, waiting 2 hours to move the 2 ammunition trucks that they've been allowed to have.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. You know, I used to play. Believe it or not, I used to play a lot of cricket in my youth, and you know, it's nothing worse than playing a cricket match and sort of standing at fine leg all afternoon, and then being put into bat at number 10.
Yes,
and you just think, actually, I'm not sure I want to bother doing this next week.
Yeah,
so it's got to be different. Isn't it?
I'm a retired wicket keeper, so I had something to do all the time.
That explains why you've got that explains why there's plenty of jabber going on. Ken,
oh God, yeah.
If there's ever in a man that's full of jabber, it's always the wicket keeper.
That's true. We had I used to play with a guy who went to unbelievably bowl for for Lancashire, and he was the fastest bowler I have ever come across in my entire life. And we used to play on this pitch in the middle of nowhere that was built on a slag heap. So the bounce was A, unpredictable, and B, it just went forever. And I remember standing on the boundary rope and still hardly being able to stop the ball. And that's my endearing remember. This ball is coming through me. It's got to be, you have to be high 80s, early 90s. He really, really did fly at it. And just stood at the back desperately, like more and more in the gloves going in and socks and everything, just try and protect my hands. So great to hear.
I know that feeling, and I know the pod's not about cricket, but I've got a similar story. I used to open the batting, and we went on tour to Norfolk, and we played against Fakenham in Norfolk, and we'd all been out very late the night before. We were all very, very hungover, and I went out. We lost the toss, and we had to bat. I went out and opened the batting, and the guy with the opening bowler was the Norfolk opening bowler.
Yeah, and
he came in and he bowled his first ball. He bowled a bouncer, but I was completely oblivious to that, and I just played forward. I couldn't see the ball. I just played forward, and I could literally sort of hear the ball as it zinged past my ear hole. But those were the days when I was younger and could actually got a 50 that day as well on the back.
Oh, of that. Nice! Did that first ball wake you up then?
Yeah, I think it must have done. It certainly. New trousers, please.
Well, welcome to Yorkshire Gamers Elite Big Cricket Podcast, everyone.
Where's
Jeffrey, good old Jeffrey. I've played Jeffrey Boycott Bingo many times in pub gardens, listening to Radio 4. Very, very funny man. If there was advice that you would give to a new gamer who may be scared of a big game, what would it be?
Well, if you're scared of a big game, either find out some people that are going to introduce you nicely into a big game and get into the right group of people to do that, or start with a small game and make it bigger. Yeah. And then you'll find your own definition of what big looks like. Yeah. I think clubs are fewer, and I'm not quite sure what the club scene is looking like. To be fair, I'm not sure how easy it is to go and find a club. Yeah. But I think what do people want when they come into the hobby? Most of them are coming in from fairly small. This is my opinion. Yeah. Might not be fact. A lot of people are coming in from Warhammer or whatever they're playing, the Games Workshop, and they're coming in at that kind of 50 figures aside kind of level. Some of them. Yeah. So when they see something that's like that in historicals, it's quite appealing. But also, I guess some of them are megalomaniacs and have got big armies. I think it's the fear of building a big army, isn't it? Yeah. I think people these days want everything really quickly. Yeah. And building a big army, as you know, takes a long time. Yeah. I was listening to something with Stephen Fry on yesterday, completely unrelated to Wargame, but he was talking about something they're now calling deferred pleasure. And how the modern generation, and again it's generalizing, but in psychological terms, how people want immediate pleasure rather than working for a pleasure that will come sometime in the future. And I think that may be a little bit to do with people being a little bit scared of bigger armies. Yeah, it's an investment, isn't it? You realize you have to start small. You paint one figure and you think, Christ, I've got 3,000 more to do. I mean, my Mexicans, I said to myself, I'm not going to get thousands of Mexicans. I'm only going to get, this small body. Yeah. But I know full well that in the fullness of time, I'll add to that and I'll get some more figures here and there. Yeah. The next thing you know, you look in the cupboard and you have got a very large collection. Yeah, and I think I can
own up to the general public and say I'm absolutely crap at Skirmish wargaming. That's my problem, because our World War II early war desert stuff. Yeah, we'll get a box of the Perry's plastics, and we'll each get a tank, and we'll have a nice little game. And then, like 2 years later, 60, 70 tanks, 300-400 figures, and it just blows out. So that's my excuse. I'm just not very good at Skirmish gaming. I think that's
well. I like to buy units. So for tanks, for instance, I won't buy one tank. I'll buy there's 4 in a troop. So I'll buy 4. So for instance, Recce, I've got an entire Recce squadron for late World War II. Now I know that if I'm playing Chain of Command, I'm probably only ever going to put 1 or 2 of those vehicles on that table. But I like the idea of, this is the collector part in me. Yeah. I like the idea of being able to lay out those vehicles and say, look, there's a reconnaissance. There's a reconnaissance squadron from 1944. You've got the mix of vehicles in that. I just like having that feeling, and I kind of hope so one day we get them on the table. So every now and then we do big. There is a variant of Chain of Command called Big Chain of Command. Oh, so you can play multiple. Yeah, it's like you just multiply it up, and it works really well. And every now and then we do a big game, so there's a chance to field those bigger units in that. And of course, if you go down a scale now, you don't have to go down a scale, but so for instance, O Group, I don't know if you know of O Group, which is new rule set from Dave Brown that's just come out through not Two Fat Lardies as such, but Reiswitz Press, which is our sort of sister publishing house, which is other people writing in Reiswitz Press. So we've got Dave Brown's O Group in there. And that's battalion size. So battalion size is a pretty big World War II game, where you do get to field squadrons and things like that.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that chat on big games, Nick. It's always good to get a different perspective on it. And as I said earlier on, lots of people have talked about the social aspect and the friendship aspect and the group experience. And to me, it's all about having a laugh with your mates. So that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Listen, if you're not having a laugh, you're not doing it right.
No, there's some very serious people out there, though, isn't there? Very serious. Well, this is going to be interesting next, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to go for the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. And have you got any links to Yorkshire at all, Nick? Other than
I have. My brother is a Yorkshireman.
Oh, excellent. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a second. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Yorkshire Gamer Quiz. And the usual disclaimer at the start is that there's no right or wrong. And agreeing with me is not necessarily a good thing. So a big score could be negative, if you like. And the highest score ever is 90%. And that was from one of my gaming mates. And he dropped points because he supports Leeds United. Or you could say that Chris Breeze, in my first ever episode, who got 60%, is in the lead because he's less Yorkshire Gamer. So, Nick, are you ready?
Well, in that case, I can't fail to win.
So, 20 quick fire questions. There will either be yes or no or one or the other. Explanations will be given if required. So we'll get going. And the first question is go big or go home?
Go big.
Go big. Contrast paints, are they great or are they a gimmick?
I think they are a great gimmick.
Ooh. Half a point.
Half a point for being a smart ass.
Yeah. There is only one right answer to the next question. Paintbrushes, Winsor & Newton or Yorkshire Made Pro Art?
I'm going to go Winsor & Newton and add my apologies.
Oh, can't believe it. 96 figures. Is that an army or a pike block?
Oh, that's a really hard one for me. 96. Yeah. I'm going to say it's an army.
Oh, first one to say that. Controversial.
Yeah, I bet. Yep.
6x4. Is that a big game or a small game?
I'd say it's what most people expect to game on. I think you can have a big game on it.
Ooh.
It's a big game.
back to less controversial now.
Have I got any points yet?
You're on 1.5. You're doing really well.
Okay, that's good.
Points-based army or historical order of battle?
Historical order of battle every single time. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Now, I had my money on you getting this. I'm not saying right, but right.
Not wrong.
But you've let me down a couple of days ago with this. Wet palette or old bit of MDF to mix your paints?
Well, if you'd asked me last week, I would have said old bit of MDF. This week, I'm on the wet palette. Next week, I could be back on the MDF. Okay, I've taken a wet palette. Sydney has been, as you know, Sydney has always gone on about his wet palette. His wet palette this, wet palette that. So in a moment of madness, I bought one from a well-known brand, and I tried it last week. I'm still using it at the moment.
And
it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Let's see where I am in a month.
How's the crest growing? Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you'd never convinced me.
It's a bit like that.
When you're undercoating figures, are you a black undercoat or a white undercoat?
I'll go brown, so I'll probably go black more than white. So
brown,
black, if that's the choice. Yeah, brown. Halfords spray. Halfords do a camouflage paint.
Yes, they are wonderful. Where wargaming would be without Halfords, I've got no idea.
Absolutely.
I need to get some...
Every time I go there, there's a big queue of wargamers.
I must have used industrial scale amount of their primer over the year. It's just madness. Another one where there's only one answer: Yorkshire tea or dirty mucky coffee.
I'm going to get a point here. Yorkshire tea every time, and I get really, really disappointed when I go to hotels in the morning and I order a cup of tea, and they look at me like I'm mad because everybody else sitting there has their nice cup of coffee or their skinny latte or whatever it is, and I'd say no, I'd like a pot of tea, please.
Well, if we go anywhere posh, Mrs. Riley will ask for a skinny latte, and I just walk away from her. I just leave her on a table on her own, and I have a cup of tea somewhere. Number 10, wargame units. Do you like them, the figures tightly packed or socially distanced?
Tightly packed for me.
Good.
Yeah, I like the feeling of force.
Yeah. Interesting on your answer for this one. Do you like a 2-hour club game or a monster weekend game?
I like a monster weekend game. You know, I'd love to have more monster weekend games. I can have both.
The last one will give you a point, and you need them.
I'll take anything.
Now, we are just entering the Nick Skinner special question, and this is dedicated to you, young sir. Avocado, is it just posh mushy peas?
Well, it might taste like that, but I'm convinced it's doing me the world of good.
You reckon?
So I'm in the avocado camp. Oh. That's a fact. I quite like avocado with scrambled egg and bacon with some fresh chili is a lovely breakfast.
I'm lost there.
Convince me.
Was that Polish you were just speaking?
Yeah.
If you said look mushy, at me,
mushy nobody loves a bacon sandwich more than I do.
That's brilliant. Round dice, spherical dice, are they allowed or banned?
Do you know, I've never heard of them. I've never heard of round dice. I've never seen round dice. And to be honest, I hope I never do because they sound ridiculous.
Yes, somebody brought them here. And I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago. They rolled 3 or 4 of them, and like 2 of them shot across the table. One of them knocked some pikes off a pike block, and the other one rolled off the end of the table. And of course, any dice off the table don't count. So it was get rid of them now. Straightforward.
Oh, dice off the table don't count. I'll have to write that down because when Richard throws his dice across the room, he has to wait to see if they come up 6s. He might go and get them if they do. I'm not saying he's a cheat, but he might be.
Is it right? Dice off the table do not count. Simple as that. Simple rule. Courtesy of Yorkshire Gamer, you can have that for now, mate. No problems at all. Question 14. Would you pay 33 pence for a communist?
I've got no idea what that refers to, so it sounds like a lot of money to me. I'd say no.
Good lad. Good lad. Interesting for a rule writer, this one. Do you like a good table in a set of rules, like a casualty table or a factor table?
I don't like tables and rules.
Controversial.
I'm biting my lip. I'm biting my lip there because I could go on about that because I think there's a time and a place for everything. But generally, I try to avoid tables. Generally, try to avoid any kind of lookup whatsoever.
Yeah, I think if the more you play a game, the less you need to look it up.
Yeah, that's a fact.
And a lot of my friends play a lot, and I mean a lot, of Grand Manor, the old Napoleonic set, and there's lots of tables in that. But they know them because they've been playing them for 30 years. They don't have to look anything up.
Well, I've got a copy of my copy of If the Lord Spares Us here. I look on the back cover, and it's got all the tables. The kind of play sheet on the back with about 300 tables on it. So there's me saying that I don't like tables, and there's written evidence of a rule set that's got more tables than MFI.
Yeah, Your Honour, I refer to the previous answer from this gentleman, and I produce If the Lord Spares Us. 28 mil is king, yes or no?
That's a really good question. I think no, it isn't king. No, it isn't king.
It's not king. Unpainted miniatures, are they allowed on the table?
Not on mine. No. Wargames should be, I think we should do our best to make them visually appealing.
Yeah. Excellent. I'll just stand up and show the club badge on my T-shirt before you answer this question. Bradford City or Leeds United?
Bradford City, because Leeds United are a bunch of foulers.
Dirty
That's
Leeds.
my professional opinion.
Dirty Leeds.
And I think it might get me a point, and I'm desperate to get whatever points I can get. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan.
Oh, excellent. Well, you'll have played Bradford City about twice in the last 100 years, then, because we're always propping up the bottom of the 4th division with all the other railway towns. Two questions to go. Yorkshire or the other place over the hill?
What, lanky?
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Do you know what? I would go Yorkshire. Absolutely Yorkshire.
Good lad. And finally, Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil?
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
I think there are loads of people come into the hobby through Games Workshop. So have I got a positive score, Ken?
You have got, sir.
He's adding up.
Yeah, I have to do that occasionally. You wouldn't believe I had a degree in engineering, would you? 60%, sir. 60%. So you've gone to the.
Well, that's got to be an A grade, surely.
Yeah, you've gone to the top with Chris Breeze, or at the bottom with Chris Breeze, depending on which way you like.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's at least it's good. I'm in good company. That's good. I'm happy with that.
Well, thanks very much for taking part in that, Nicky. It's a bit of a joke and a bit of a laugh, and I know everyone has different opinions, and some came out there, and that was great. So we'll just.
There's some good questions in there, Ken. It's testing, It's
testing, especially the avocado one.
Yeah, well, yeah. My missus has put me on an 800 calorie a day diet, and one of the things I can enjoy is avocado on that, and you are allowed bacon, so it's that's all right.
Is avocado one of those things where you use more calories preparing it than you do eating it, like celery?
Yeah, probably. Well, actually, my experience of avocado is you buy 3 and you throw 2 of them in the bin because they go off really quickly, and the third one you might get to eat. So that's part of the fun is actually the lottery of whether you can actually eat it or not once you open it.
Well, I have to say I can't remember a time where we've had an avocado in the house. Mrs. Riley's is a farmer's daughter, so she's not going to know what an avocado is, I'm afraid. But I might go and try one. See what they're like, and I have them with.
I'm not part of the avocado marketing board, but I quite enjoy an avocado. It makes me feel healthy when I've got sort of bacon and eggs with a bit of avocado on the side.
Excellent. I like that. A bit of sin food on the side. That's fantastic. Well, thanks for that, Nick. We'll move on to our big topic in a second. Well, that was great, cracking effort there at the quiz from Nick. Thank you very much for that. Got a couple of things on my list for the big topic, and the first one is a set of rules. And I'm very grateful for Nick to coming on the show, because normally I think people will ask you to come on and plug your latest product, and I'm asking you to come on and talk about something that you did years ago, and is probably not one of your best sellers.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Until now,
the hundreds, it is now hundreds. It's coming up to nearly 1,000 people who listen to these. Will now be aware of this rule set, because we're just going to talk about it, and it's a massive favourite here at Yorkshire Gamer, and we have one game a year of it, and we go big with it. We go absolutely massively big with it. So I've got Nick on to tell me that we're doing it completely wrong. So the set of rules, Nick, is if the Lord spares us. So just for the people out there who may not have heard of it, just tell us what it is and what it covers.
Yeah, the title tells you nothing about it, really, doesn't it? Which tells you something about the way that we wrote it. It wasn't written for a commercial as a commercial product, obviously. They are targeted at First World War in the Middle East. So I have a great uncle who served at Gallipoli. He went ashore at Suvla Bay in August 1915, then got evacuated after the Gallipoli disaster back to Egypt, spent most of 1916 in Egypt chasing some of the Senussi revolt in the Western Desert there. Then when did they start going? They started pushing towards Gaza and Palestine, and they reached Gaza in, I think, March 1917.
Yeah.
He was part of that column that went there. So you've got two battles of Gaza, one at the end of March, one at the beginning of, one in the middle of April 1917. And he was wounded at 2nd Gaza. He was in the Royal West Kent Regiment. He was a sergeant, and he got shot through the neck, and the bullet went through his neck and came out of his back. And you'd think that, well, that would be a pretty nasty wound. But he was in Cairo for 6 months, and then, 6 months, 5 months, and then sent back to the front again by the time that healed. So he must have been lucky. But in some ways, he was very unlucky, because he got back to his unit just in time for the 3rd Battle of Gaza, which is where Allenby, who by that time had taken over, and they'd reinforced the Imperial troops in Palestine. He launched a big attack, kind of a right hook through Beersheba, which outflanked the Gaza position, and then basically that broke the Turkish line. And unfortunately for him, he was killed on the 4th of November. These rules are called "If the Lord Spares Us," which is a short extract from his last letter home. So that's the. That was his how he ended his last letter. He said, "Till we meet again, if the Lord spares us." So when I worked on the rules, it seemed to me that had meaning for me to put that in there as the title. It wasn't actually the war game that got me started. It was the bit of family research that went with it. I don't know if you'd remember, Ken, but I think there was a real sense in the country as we got to the last years of the last millennium. There was a real focus on genealogy, wasn't there? People were very interested in family history, and I guess I got caught up in that. I didn't know much about Albert until then. So I researched that.
That quote then, Nick, came from him. I didn't realise that.
That was him. That was that was his last letter home.
I'll just break in there, just because I just want to share why I got into this as well, because this is exactly a very similar story. And around that time when you were talking about genealogy, and I think a lot of that was to do with an opening up of databases and an ease of being able to obtain information. I started to do a bit of family history. And I've loved my history all of my life. As you can see behind me, there's bloody thousands of books on it. And I started to do a bit of family history, and I thought, I wonder, I'm sure some of my family must have fought in World War One. And I went through it, and I found 3 or 4 people who'd been in World War One, and I found one guy was killed on the Western Front in Passchendaele. 2 guys came home, and another guy, Samuel Riley, he was buried in Baghdad. And I went, what? What? Baghdad? What are you on about? And that led me then to look into his history. He'd been in the Labour Corps, and then because of his engineering background, all my family have been engineers. He ended up in what was the start of the REME. He was in an electrical mechanical unit, and he was working. He ended up in Kut, and ended up being moved from there to Baghdad, and sadly passed away from illness in Baghdad, and is buried and is still in Baghdad Northgate Cemetery. I'm sorry. And one of my dearest dreams is to go there, and because none of my family will have been, and it's over 100 years ago now, isn't it? It's over 100 years ago that he got buried there, and because of the troubles in Iraq, it's just not possible to go, and it's a real shame. And I hope one day, before I shuffle off the mortal coil, I'll be able to go. And that led to my interest in this period. So sorry to burst in there, Nick, but I thought it would be good to share that at the same time. So you were saying,
no, it's good. It's good. Well, I mean, and I'll just add to that. I mean, my great uncle is buried in Beersheba, in the cemetery of Beersheba as well. And these Commonwealth war graves, of course, are all across the world, aren't they? You know, not just on the Western Front. And I love battlefield walking, as I'm sure you do, and many others. But I have a real passion for battlefield walking and understanding the battle, and I'd love to go out there and see some of those. But to go to Beersheba and Gaza, it's not something that I would do at the moment.
I think it's still quite well looked after, isn't it? From the pictures that I've seen,
they're very well, amazingly well looked after. Despite everything that goes on around them, they are cared for, and they're immaculate. And you get a photograph. So we contact them and got a photograph of his headstone, for instance, which was really meaningful. But I think it's in the research of him that I wanted to find out more about what happened to him. And we've got some photos. We know about when he was killed, and there's even a photo of his temporary grave in a little gully up in the hills, in the foothills above Beersheba. And so I wanted to find out more about that. I researched the battalion. You start with whatever histories you can get. There weren't that many around, really, because I think this was pre-millennium, where, I don't know, it seems there's a lot. Obviously, there's more material available now, more easily available. The growth of information on the internet has taken off. And so it's a real research piece to try and find out, try and piece together what had happened to him and find out more about his story. And of course, by doing that, I read more and more about that campaign and understood more about the campaigns and the expeditions that the expeditionary forces went on, the tactics, the unit compositions, all that kind of stuff. And I started to put it together as a wargamer does. I thought, well, actually, I want to wargame this. I want to do it. And I don't know quite why I chose brigade level, because Itlesoo, I'll call it Itlesoo if the Lord spares us, was written for brigade size games. So we're looking at the brigade. You have a brigade commander. You have probably 4 battalions in the brigade, and then each battalion has companies, because in most rule sets we tend to operate 2 levels down. So the smallest unit is a company. Well, I guess if you took a base, it would be a platoon. But and you may have adapted it to fit you what you need. But it was understanding how that war worked and realizing that, this is the First World War. But this is not trenches. Yes, there are trenches. If in Gallipoli, you've got trenches and you've got trench warfare as you have on the Western Front. But you've got out where you go in the more mobile parts of the war when you hit Palestine. You've got camel troops, you've got light horse, you've got the use of machine guns in big areas of open ground. You've got Turkish army, which is actually really stubborn on the defense and of lots of varying troop qualities. And on the imperial side, you've got Indian troops, you've got Commonwealth, Australians, New Zealand, you've got guys from Essex and Yorkshire, and the whole mix together. It's a fantastic mix as a period. And I thought, I just want to do this. But there were no figures available. Well, there were very few. I think Minifigs did a World War I range for the Middle East. So my figures, some of the figures that are on the front of the rules here, I notice, I think some of those are Sudan range. You're kind of, just slightly tweaked. because they're close enough at that scale. And the only guys that did a really good range, I thought, were Eureka at that time. And so I've got lots of Eureka to go with that. And yeah, it just grew from that, really. It's very much a product of family history and something that was real fun to do. But, commercially, it's not really part of the war that people are interested in. It was never done with any commercial drive whatsoever.
Yeah, I think very much like myself, it's very unknown. It's like some of the fighting up in the Italian hills and in Yugoslavia around there. I just think it's because people aren't aware of it, and I would like to. I'm not a professional historian by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been gaming and reading history books for a very, very long time, and for me to go, I don't know anything about this, and then look at it. When was this written? We did discuss this earlier on.
I'll just note in the front here it says first edition, published December 2005. So unless that's a typo, which it could be, I'm guessing that must be when it came out.
First edition, is that like one of them Harry Potter ones where it'll sell for like 300 grand or whatever?
That's right. Well, if it does, you'll be the first to get 10%.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You spoke about the research for the rules, and it was difficult at the time, 2005. How was that done? What books do you remember? What books that you looked at, or what sources you used?
Yeah, so there was there were some sources that were always cited as the go-to text. So there's a book by Ericsson, which is called Ordered to Die, about the Turkish army. There's the Handbook of the Ottoman Army. Not a lot written on the Ottomans at all, really quite difficult. There's the Ospreys, and Ospreys are always good places to start, aren't they? But then I went for the official histories. So the official histories that were written after the war, all the various volumes of those. And I guess I am a bit of an intellectual snob when it comes to some of those, because I always like to know that I've read the definitive account. I don't want to miss anything. I want to know that I've read, that I feel that I'm well read on that area. So I will get hold, or try to get hold of the texts that are difficult to come by. Yeah. And so I spend much more on my books than I do on my figures because of that. My book, I say to my wife, if I peg it, don't worry about the figures. It's the books that are worth money. Yeah.
And have you kept abreast of publishing and books in the period since writing the rules? I know there's a lot of Turkish stuff that seems to be coming out recently, and I've picked a couple of books up over the last 3 or 4 years from Turkish sources that are quite useful.
I'm aware of them, but actually I haven't read them, and I guess probably I'm a little bit scared too, because I know what it might trigger off.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, it would be for the Mexicans.
So 2005 then, just place that in Lardy World then. What had come out? What were we waiting for?
So I think by then it was probably our, fourth or fifth product that went out there. I think when we kind of decided that, okay, let's put some more out there, to see. We've got some other ideas. People say, what else have you got? I say, well, we're going, how about this one? So I think it fits into that category. And we've got, I don't know what our release schedule has been over the years. But in those early years, we produced, quite a number of rule sets, 4 or 5 rule sets quite quickly. Whereas these days we might produce, it's slower because it's a more intense process. Yeah. And probably more complete these days. Yeah. This was put together at the heart of this. Richard wrote some rules called Triumph of the Will, which were about the Russian Civil War. And because they covered the same time frame, we took these as kind of like the skeleton for this. Yeah. But then by the time you've knocked off all the bits that don't apply, that skeleton's barely recognisable. And so it stands alone as its own set, I think.
Now, looking back on it, today might have been the first time that you've looked at it in a while. How do you feel about it now?
I think if we wrote it today, it would be very, very different. I think we would use, looking through this, there's quite a lot of tables in here, for instance.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been one thing we changed. I think what I like about it is the card activation and some of the cards that are in there I really like. I think we will probably keep those. It's got the tea break card in there, but it's got, some other cards, stiff upper lip, other bits and pieces in there. But I think, and I like the leadership in here. I like the command. You have a command. You have a brigade commander, and he influences other units through the use of his signals bases. Yep. So if I want to stay coordinated, I stay quite close together, and I can probably coordinate quite well.
Yeah.
Whereas if I get very spread out, it becomes much more difficult for me to manage that process and to remove shock from units. And so I think they would stay in there, because our focus much more now. Well, it was in here, but even more so now is on that command decision-making process. So I think we probably strengthen that. But there were some odd things in here. So, for instance, we had to do machine guns differently, because machine guns in the First World War were very different to the way they were used in the Second World War. We tend to think of them as forming part of the platoon, and using their support power. But you've got machine guns deployed here almost as batteries and used to deny the enemy the ability to move in certain areas, and they're powerful. So I think we changed them. I think we would change them. Richard and I actually took them out a few years ago and said we'll play a game with them. And then we played the game. We thought, actually, you know what, we should revisit these and improve them from where they are. But actually, I think if you want to play Middle East, I don't think there's much else out there, to be honest. No. But I think that they give you a flavour for the game. Well, Ken, look, you tell me, because you're the guy who plays them. You're the guy who's made them his own and done loads with them. So what do you do with them?
We're fairly close to the originals, to be honest. We've probably gone a level higher. So each of our players.
I thought you might.
How did you guess? So each of our players tends to command a brigade, rather than having the brigade as the thing on the table. And all we've done with that,
it works. You just scale it up.
Yeah. All we've done is have a higher level commander, a divisional commander or an army commander, who has those same bases. The signal bases, because I've had loads of fun. I've got one with a pigeon. I've got a Yorkshire tea one. And those signal bases just make the game. They really do. It's absolutely fantastic. And other than that, there's maybe one or two slight changes we've made to the dice rolls, but we found even for that size of game, we don't have any problems at all. Because what we tend to do is we'll tend to, almost like a game of poker, we'll tend to deal 5 cards out and put them in the middle of the table, and then you just crack on with your unit. And if it comes after somebody else's units that it interacts with, then that person goes first. But it enables the table to keep moving and everyone to have something to do at some stage.
Well, that's the luxury of the big game, isn't it? Because you can move in one part of the table. This guy can be busy moving his troops over there, and then you can move something else on the other side. You don't need to worry about waiting for him. You can just crack on with it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people make that mistake. They think that, I've got to sit here and do nothing while everything's going on.
Right, yeah.
And my distinct memory, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, one of the games where we played Jutland, I was in charge of the German battle cruisers, which are right at the front of the German line, and 2-day game, and I had absolutely no idea what was going on at the other end of the table, because I was so engrossed in my little battle with the British battle cruisers in the front of the British line and the armoured cruisers, that I was pinking off one at a time. Very, very enjoyable. And I enjoyed that part of it, because that's how that commander of the battle cruiser squadron will be concentrating on his bit and then waiting for signal man behind him, who's got his signal out looking at the Kaiser at the front of the German battle line, waiting for flags to go up or a signal to come across, and he's not bothered about what's happening over there until he carries it. So yeah, that's our kind of big game experience with them. And I was going to say, are we doing it wrong? Because we've got too many figures on the table. So
well, it's great. I've seen your games, Ken. I've seen photos of your games. I hope maybe one day that love to see one in the flesh, as it were. But they look fantastic when you do it with this suit. They're really evocative of the period as well. So you put a lot of love into the figures, I know.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's very much outside the scope of what the Lard days do, because people tend to do 3 or 4 games during the day. But I've pitched the idea to the lad who's running Steel Lard, and I've said I'm quite happy to come and put a big game on a big table, and maybe people might want to play all day, or they might want to do a session, and I'm quite happy to run it however it works.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be great. I love that.
Yeah, so it will, and the big game Lard. It will work wonderful. I'm sure it will. What's the difference then, if there is, between this and your other set of World War One rules, the Mud and the Blood? Is there a big difference between the two?
Yeah. So Mud and the Blood is different scale. So these were written for brigade level. So they're very much into the higher level tactics of the action. So the way that machine guns and artillery works, for instance, is very different. They're a different rule set. They're chalk and cheese really from Mud and the Blood. Mud and the Blood is much smaller level. In fact, you could apply Mud and the Blood to Middle East in terms of the platoon level tactics that would go into that would transfer across, because the British were training their infantry to work in certain ways. And yes, it's different on the Western Front than it is in the Middle East, but there's certain aspects of the way they're working which are very similar. So they're very different rule sets. They cover the same war, but that's about where the similarity ends.
And although I've looked through lots of your sets of rules, and there is a familiarity between them. It's a set of Lard rules, if you like, and that's positive in many ways. And we have the same thing with General de Brigade, the Kriegskunst, which is 7. I've got to be careful how I say that. 7 years war rule set, and British Grenadier for the AWI. But is there a danger, or does it happen that you can get the rule sets mixed up because of a similarity between them?
I don't know. There may be. There are certain things that go across rules. So this is a card-driven rule set. I Ain't Been Shot Mum is a card-driven rule set. And I guess you can see connections. It's like DNA, isn't it, of a rule set? You can see where they come from, because they've got certain similar aspects. And I guess if you were to, if you wanted to analyze our rules now and kind of track that DNA back, you could probably find different bits in different rule sets where we use a similar mechanism. Well, that's because we like it, and that's because we know that it works. And I guess we like to tweak things to give them flavour. So you can't use the same system. But actually, if something works and it works well, then why not use it again?
Oh no, definitely. And it's just whether you had experience of, because they're similar, getting mixed up between.
Well, I think you can, as certainly when I'm playing them, we do. Because we forget. Is it in this? What is it? Is it 2 dice or 3 dice? And so we get that wrong all the time. And most famously, we get that wrong on Lard TV when we do things on Lard games. We get things wrong all the time. And the great thing is that people are much more observant than we are, because they are. They say, you got that wrong. You did that bit wrong, and we're completely oblivious to it most of the time.
People love it, don't they? When they say, "You've done that wrong. You've done that wrong, lad. What's wrong?
Yeah.
You've done that wrong."
Yeah. Well, never let the rules get in the way of a good game, eh?
Exactly. You've mentioned this a couple of times about the scale of If the Lord Spares Us, and it's very different to, as far as I'm aware, all the other Lard sets. Was that a conscious decision at the time?
At the time, it was, very much so. We did a set of rules called Core Blimey, which was core level Western Front, but much more Kriegspiel in its nature. So no figures involved, but it's very much about the building up of resources for a big push. But we've done games around the the whole 1917 Kaiserschlacht, you know, the big battles of the 1917 onwards around that, but not figure games. Yeah, this was definitely written with that brigade in mind because I wanted to fight those actions out there, and I wanted to do it on a big table where you had room for manoeuvre and you had flanks. Yeah, and you tend to get that. So by using 15 mil, if I'm doing 15 mil on a 6x4, which is what most people have already access to, then you know you can say, well, actually, there's big enough room to deploy a brigade and get some manoeuvrability on there. So it just worked, and I tried to base it on the historical encounters. Really, what's the unit of operation? What's the kind of scale that we could work around? And brigade was the way that it landed.
And I certainly with us the sweeping motions you can have with cavalry brigades and stuff like that, which just weren't possible on the Western Front. If you set off on your horse, you were going to find a trench, weren't you? If you didn't, you were in Switzerland, and it's as simple as that. So, just a final question on If the Lord Spares Us: is there any chance of a reboot? You mentioned it earlier on.
I would love to, but it is unlikely.
Yeah, and is that? And I'm not saying that it's not because the rules aren't right, but I'm saying, is that because the period is not popular?
I think you've got to have your heart in it. With any rule set that you're producing, you've got to have your heart in it. You don't write it as say I'm gonna, this isn't commercial. Well, there's a kind of thing that, yes, if it's going to be commercial, if we're going to take it to the market, that's one thing. But actually, you can't write something that you're not interested in. Yeah. I've kind of done If the Lord Spares Us. At the moment, I've got a backlog of other things in my head, and I've committed to other things. Yeah. Having said that, like any other wargamer, I'm, shiny. Oh, that looks good. All we need to do is play a couple of games, and who knows what would then follow on the back of that. But I haven't got any plans to do anything with If the Lord Spares Us. But it does remain. It remains really special to me. Yeah. And it's lovely for me to hear that people are playing it. Yeah. And it's actually, it does sell. We joke about it. Yeah. But there are some products in our portfolio that kind of trickle out there, and as a steady seller. And If the Lord Spares Us is one of those.
Yeah, and well, you can absolutely guarantee that Yorkshire Gamer will play at least one game a year of it. We are determined. We started off with the drive on Basra in 1915, and we've done the Siege of Kut. We've just finished that, so we're just about to start on the drive to try and end the Siege of Kut.
Those actions there, with including the gunboats, etc., on the Tigris, they're really interesting engagements as well. A great campaign up there in that early. Well, I say early, moving up to Kut, and then the terrible situation at Kut that your relative was obviously caught up in there too.
Yeah, I remember one game that we played, and we had a gunboat. Came up to a jetty, and a company of Gurkhas charged off their gunboat and took a machine gun post, and we just went, wargaming does not get any better than that. That's it. There, we've just completed wargaming. I finished it, mate.
And the great thing about that is, and this I think is a test, not just for not for rule sets, but for wargames themselves. Yeah. When you tell the story of the wargame, in my mind's eye, if you can then imagine that you just read that in the official history or in an account, then you're getting it right. If it reads like and plays back in your mind like it would have done in history, then you think, actually, I'm paying a bit of homage to the guys that were there by replicating this and simulating it in want of a better word. But also, it kind of makes sense and it's fun, and I just like it. It's great.
Right, Nick, that's a great chat on If the Lord Spares Us. Thank you very much for that. A very, very popular set of rules here at Yorkshire Gamer. And having a rule writer to talk to is an interesting one for me, because I wanted to talk to you about writing rules for big games and whether you had any thoughts or ideas on that. When you come to write a new set of rules, and I don't know whether you write together with Rich or individually and then merge your ideas in a McCartney and Lennon kind of way, going back to the start, do you set parameters before you start? This is going to be this size game.
No, I don't think we go for this size game necessarily. It's around. I guess it's what level do we want to aim at in terms of we talk quite a lot about the command decision. So where are we looking at? Are we looking at, is it a platoon commander that we're trying to look at, or is it the higher level? And then that will then dictate the game we want to get. And I guess I don't know for Richard, and Richard takes the lead on most of this because, it's his Two Fat Laddies is his full-time baby now. Yeah. That is entirely.
Yeah, because you're still working, aren't you, Nick?
Yeah, and that's right. I still have to work for a living. But I'm. Do you know? I like to see myself as Ardendorf, right? So you know who Ardendorf is. So he's never there to do the fighting, but he's there just when you need him with the right thing at the right time. Yeah, and that's how I see it. That's the troubleshooting. That's aimed. Yeah, and that is aimed at you, Richard. That comment, if you're listening. So. So yeah, we worked. I mean, Richard. We tend to. Richard leads on most of them because that's his baby, and he's got the time and energy to do that. And then we create something through the play test that works and get the player experience right. So for big games, I think probably it's you've got to look for simplicity. Because you want things to move quickly in a big game. Because we said about engagement, and the worst thing in the world is for people to stand there, looking down a table or just taking things and it being slow. So pace of activity for a big game would be a really important factor in that. And for that, then you probably want fluidity. So you want to emphasize, the scale and how you're going to handle those kind of fluid aspects of the action.
Have you ever thought? Because there's been some interesting choices with Two Fat Laddies, and Infamy was one for me.
Because you make the decisions in the pub.
Yeah, it's quite often where in fact, this whole podcast is whiskey related, because I was chuntering into myself up in the Wargames, listening to another podcast, going, you can't do that in 28mm. You can't have a big game in 28mm. You can't have one of them. You can't. And I'm drinking away, going, oh, that's rubbish. This all I could have a big game podcast. And I tweeted out a picture of one of my games and went, is the room for a big Wargames podcast, expecting to wake up in the morning and there'd be like some bloke who'd accidentally liked it by mistake when he was trying to feed his dog or something, and he's pressed the like button and it was like 170 odd. It's half that. So alcohol causes all sorts of problems.
It causes lots of trouble.
But Infamy, and I don't know whether you were involved in that development, is an interesting choice at a lower level, where most ancient battles that we're aware of are huge things on open plains with thousands and thousands of figures. So are you aware of the decision-making process with that?
So with the Infamy, I mean, it really was, Richard's baby. So, but what I can say is that those lower level actions, there's plenty of scope for those, and I think in terms of what people want from a game. Some people do want those big games, but some people also want to take that same principle that they're playing in others. So look at Saga and some of those other rules where that kind of size of action transfers across. And what we get with Infamy, they're plausible encounters. There's nothing crazy about that. You can't look at them and say, well, they're unreasonable, they're not historic. But they're not challenging that big battle scene. In the same way as the big. Remember the ancients, the classic terrible view of ancients that many of us would have experienced, completely across the table, almost hanging over the edges, and just to push together. I mean, they're lovely spectacles. But Infamy's got a little bit more about it, and especially when we say about big games, when you tie things together in a campaign, you can do that really nicely in Infamy. So I can't really comment on the actual process of the decisions that Rich made, because he scoped out Infamy. It really was his baby. I think that's the driver for that for him.
It's an interesting choice because, like you say, I've been struggling for a good set of ancient rules all my life, and those games that you're talking about are the ones that I've had problems with, and it's very much, and I'm not stepping out here. it's very much Ancients appears to be more of a competition style game. It's a lot about points. It's a lot about army lists. And it's and you often see 5th century AD Egyptians fighting Republican Romans, and you've got this massive time distort, if you like, and I just imagine huge armies going into the TARDIS and Doctor Who going, right, who are we going to fight today, lads? Are we off to Republican? Right, no, we'll do Imperial Romans today. We've not fought them, rather than sticking to a time frame. So it was interesting to me that choice was made to go more not it's more big skirmish, isn't it? It's probably the best way of describing it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Okay, big skirmish. I'll give you that. I'll settle on big skirmish. That's okay. It's in that same kind of. It's in that Dux Britanniarum, Sharp Practice, Chain of Command. They all tend to work around that sweet spot of that number of figures on the table. Because the kind of feedback we get is that that's what people like to be able to have. Many people like to have, they like to have forces for Chain of Command, for Sharp Practice, for Dux, for infamy. And I guess, that's it's they can go into that as a new project, and they can paint that number of figures and play the game without having to go. I'm going to say this quietly on this podcast, without having to go into full megalomaniac mode and get 7,000 figures. And it's because some people, I think those of a certain age, we've got all those years of history behind us of building big armies. I don't see that happening with younger people at the moment. I hope that they do, really hope that they do. And I'm sure that by the time they get to where we are, they will have those same armies. But I think where I was when I was 20, I didn't have, I didn't have 7,000 figures to be able to get a big game in. I had to build to that. And I think, so therefore, if I'm going to sell smaller games to you, because I kind of sense that I might need to do that.
I've got one skirmish game, and that's the Sweeney, and that's only because that's only because there's hardly anyone in it, and they couldn't afford 3,000 extras in the 70s in a TV show. So there's just 10 figures. That's all I do with it.
So if I was being interrogated by you and your sort of megalomaniac big game fans, what I would say is that you have to consider these as entry level points. Because nobody's going to build a massive army without first of all having a small one. So that's kind of like their entry points into that, and people will come through that and they will grow bigger armies. That's the case. I hope you accept it.
Oh, of course I do. Of course I do.
I don't care if you don't.
No, of course I do. But it does lead to an interesting question, and that is that you spend a lot of time with your advertising and your appearances and everything. And the thing I love about the Lard is it feels like a family, and you get a lot of people who come in and they play the games, and they'll enter another period. If you bring something out, then they'll go, oh right, I'll get some Ancients. The Lardies are doing infamy, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But have you ever thought, we've got them now. Why don't we do a higher level game? So you've got them in, you've got them hooked, and then right, let's do another level.
I think you've probably given us more credit than we deserve to think like that. Is it fun? First of all, driven by, is it fun? Can we, is it fun? Are we going to enjoy doing it? And if as a byproduct of that, people say, yeah, we'll buy it, that's great. That's really, really great. But no, we've never gone for that, because I don't think Wargamers, we don't have the scope to do that. We wouldn't have the ability to do that. We haven't got the commercial savvy or nous to do it. And we're not, we don't have that that corporate scalability that goes with that. As I say, if you buy a set of rules, you spend 20 quid on a set of rules and then go and buy 500 quid's worth of figures. If we were ready to make money, we wouldn't be rule writers. We would do something else.
No, I just wondered whether that had ever crossed your minds. Whether people had sort of, I've got this infamy army and it's really good and I really enjoy it, but I want to do something bigger. Can we have
Well, we tied up.
Infamy.
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned earlier on, we've got big chain of command. So chain of command came because people wanted to play bigger games using chain of command. So we said, okay, well, the way that you would do that is this. And sometimes it makes sense when you're at the heart of a community and people want to do things. You get different people in the community creating their own versions of stuff, which is really, really great. And there's loads of things around the LARC community that people have written, which are fantastic. Many of which they share with us and go into Lard magazine. But there's some things that we say, well, actually, we'll own that from the centre. We'll own that, and we'll produce that, and we'll include that in our kind of portfolio, and it'll be available as a PDF extra or as a whatever it might be. Depends entirely on what it looks like and how much effort's gone into it, really. And then people can grow from that. So is there an infamy? Not yet.
Not yet. And a little cheeky question on the back of that one then. If you had a figure collection that you were selling, would your rule sets be bigger?
Well, I made the mistake of selling an AWI army once. And I've never selling another one.
Yeah.
That's it. I've got massive space problems. In as much as my space isn't massive. But I'm still not at this point where I'm going to sell anything, because you just know as soon as you sell it, you want to play with it. And they're like friends, aren't they? You build these armies up, you spend hours painting them, you connect with them, and you just looking at them is nice. So even if you're not using them, looking at them gives you satisfaction. I don't think I could sell an army now.
But if the Lardies were producing 28mm white metal Carthaginian.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I completely misunderstood the question.
Would suddenly there be infamy? Because you'd be going, we could sell a few more figures here, lads.
We're not. That's not the bag we'd be good at. We kind of came together by chance and produced something good through that chemistry. And that's what we're going to stick at.
Brilliant. Well, we're close to winding up. There's just a couple of questions just to finish off. The vast majority of rules that come out now are for skirmish games, large skirmish games, small battle games. I was trying to think when the last big set of rules came out, big game set of rules. And it's probably Black Powder, which is 10 years ago, maybe more. I
don't know. You tell me. It depends about big. So look at Dave Brown's rules. Dave Brown's rules: Pickett's Charge, General Dame, O Group. They're all aimed at big games. I would argue.
Is it a financial decision? Do you think? I'll certainly take that point with Dave's rules, because we play General de Brigade here. But as a majority, there's a lot of what we call boutique games that are a box, 10, 15 figures a side, set of rules, Gangs of Rome, that sort of thing. All brilliant games in themselves, but it seems to be a majority rather than nobody's coming out and going, have this 500 figures aside.
I don't know. I mean, we've not got the clout to produce a kind of all singing, all dancing box set of here's the rules, the figures, the terrain, and everything. And that wouldn't be our methodology at all. But I can see a space where people do that. I can see that commercial business, bigger businesses with investments, and I see lots of potential for that. I guess that people to sign up to. People like things in a box. People like things to come ready packaged. So I think there probably is a space for that, but I don't think I can't see us ever working in that way. It just wouldn't be our style.
That's brilliant, because Rich is doing Italian Wars, isn't he?
Well, God knows what he's doing with that. I mean, he's kind of gone off on this mad journey. He's painting Landsknechts. And I know that we're meeting at our club next week for the first time since lockdown ended. And I just have a horrible feeling that that's what we're going to be playing. And yet, and I don't know if you saw it this week, he tweeted a photo of, he's working on the rules that he's going to use, and he just tweeted a blank sheet of paper.
Blank page.
So we're going to have, I know what it'll be. It'll be a workshop session, and we'll come out of that either throwing everything in the bin because that does happen. Because we just realize this isn't what we want to do, and it's not going to work, and it's miles away from anything it could be that could even be interesting, or it's one of those things that gets paced quickly. And Richard, one of those guys, when he gets a taste for something, when he gets a sniff of it, he goes after it 150%. Yeah. He's been trying to take it easy over the last few months, but I know full well that when we come back, when we do this next Tuesday, it will be it'll be one of those two outcomes. We'll either never play it again, or it will be this is the next project.
Brilliant. Well, I'm as you probably know, we're massive into Italian wars here, so I'm very interested to see what comes out of these rule writing sessions and see what happens with it, and see whether it ends up as the second Lardy set that we play here. You never know.
Well, you never know. Fingers crossed.
So just before we go and we wrap up, I always give people an opportunity to ask me a question, and you can't have the PIN number to me credit card. So have you got one before we go?
I did have one. I was going to ask. I've got two. I'm going to ask you. The first one is, if you're in a hot air balloon with Jeff Boycott, Michael Parkinson, and Brian Clough, who'd you push out first? But I won't ask you that one.
Yeah, Brian Clough, just for the record.
Tell me and tell everybody about the Sweeney, because I think what I first noticed about you, Ken, on social media before I noticed anything else was the Sweeney games that you play, and this brilliant ability you've got to bring those 70s cop shows to life in some of those little vignette dioramas that you do. So just, if you can, in I'll give you the same challenge in 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
In 4 minutes, tell us about the Sweeney, love, or your nick.
Well, I am particularly crap, as I've said previously, with skirmish games, and I get bored very quickly. If I've only got to do 30 or 40 figures for a game, it's like painted. I'm bored now. What do I do? But with the Sweeney, I've always been into crooked dice and the 7 TV figures. I don't know whether you've seen their range of figures, and they're just brilliant. Absolutely out of this world. And I've always wanted to do some, and then one day, because I work shifts, I was awake in the day, and I'm watching ITV4 or whatever it is, and boom, Sweeney comes on, and I go, oh wow, I remember this from my youth. This, and then I start to think, oh, this would be all right for a game. This, well, then I kind of go, it's a skirmish game. Yeah, I'm not interested. But what kept me going and what keeps me going with the Sweeney is the sets for the games. So whereas I've finished painting all the figures, although I do need a DS Carter, if somebody could make me one out there, that'd be very kind of you. Thank you very much. And I've got all the figures and the painted and the done and the finished. I can carry on for quite a long time building the scene. So I don't know whether you've seen. I've got a bank, and I've got a big.
They look great.
I've got some. I've got a shop that's got all like the Hovis and stuff in it, all the stuff from the time. And I've got a pub called the Red Lion, that's named after
a showroom as well, haven't you?
Yeah, car showroom, Arthur Daly car showroom. And I've picked up cars from the internet. There's Vanguards, the offshoot of Corgi, that make really, really nice models. And the model of the actual Sweeney car, I hunted that for months and months and months. So there's an interest there. And rule-wise, I've kind of set off doing my own stuff with it. And we've just, as an example of one of the rules, these little evidence markers around the table, and you can go and the police officer has to pick them up. They can't ignore them because it's a plus or a minus when you pick it up. And you can either pick a piece of evidence up, like a fingerprint or a cigarette butt for DNA or something like that, or you can pick up a pack of Spangles or an old dirty copy of Mayfair or something like that, something completely useless and unrelated. And then at the end of the game, you tot up what's happened, and it's not about shooting people and killing people. You have like it's the cops have caught the robbers, then they work out how much evidence they've got, and can they prosecute them? Can they go to court? Do they go to prison? So it's like a little, very short but fun sort of dice rolling thing at the end of it, and it's like, Big Dave's got 14 years for doing that, brag.
That's great. You know, there's a product there, mate. There's a product there. People would love to play that. You know, we've got a history of Lard Island of playing silly games as sort of Christmas and fun games like that. And I spent hours hunting for an A-team van, which I managed to find. So only solely for the purpose, so that we could have them bursting out of a barn during a Christmas game, just for a laugh. I understand where you are with that. I love the Sweeney. Absolutely big fan of the Sweeney.
Yeah, I'm hoping now. We're first game back on Sunday here, Spanish Civil War, and then our club, the Leeds Wargames Club, have just got new premises that are permanent. So we'll be able to go down and do loads of games and stuff there on the evenings, and get some people involved with a bit of Sweeney gaming, and hopefully you'll see some more photographs of it in the future. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, Nick. It's been very appreciative of you to come on, especially, as I say, talking about a 15, 16-year-old rule set rather than the latest release.
I've loved it. I've really, really loved it. It's nice to reconnect to it. As I say, I've got a copy out of the bookshelf. Even when I look through it, I think, did we write that? Was that rule in there? I don't remember that. So thank you for the opportunity to reconnect and to come on and to find out more about the Sweeney, Ken. And to find out that I'm only 60% Yorkshire. That's pretty good.
Yeah. There's a positive whether you get big or small on my quiz. Every as we said, everyone's a winner these days. Everyone's a winner. Thanks very much, Nick. Good night. That was a lovely chat with Nick. Very much enjoyed that. Slightly longer than normal, but I was having fun. So, and as with the episode with Dr. Chris Brown, I thought about cutting a section out here and there just to make it shorter, but I was enjoying it, and I hope you enjoy it too. It was good fun. Brilliant 4-minute challenge from Nick, fantastic. And in between talking about cricket and avocados, we did manage to get some Wargames chat in there, and lots of interesting stuff around ideas for what a big game is, and that's great to hear. And it was lovely to talk with him about shared family history and an interest in a slightly obscure period of World War One. And if you haven't had a look at If the Lord Spares Us, please do so, and please have a look at that Mesopotamia, Gaza, Palestine part of World War One. Really, really interesting actions, lots of interesting units, camels, gunboats. It really is worth having a look. And if you've not seen our games, Yorkshire Gamer, pop onto the Yorkshire Gamer blog. We do a big game every Christmas, and there's plenty of write-ups on those there. So that leaves me just to let you know that the next podcast will be out, episode 8, won't it? In 2 weeks' time. And I shall be interviewing another rule writer, and this is he's going to be Simon Hall, and Simon is from that other place over the hill, would you believe? But he's written a number of rule sets in the past, and he has got a rule set out at the moment called Mortimer Glorium, which we're hoping to use here at Yorkshire Gamer for our ancient games. And although the rule set can be used for the more traditional competition style army list points based games that ancients are more known for, they do transfer to the big game as well, and Simon's a proponent of that, and plays games 6-8 aside over in Cape Town in South Africa, where he's based now. So we've been out of Yorkshire a couple of times. We've been to Wales with Gareth in episode 1 and up to Scotland with Chris Brown in episode 2. We're now going intercontinental over to South Africa, so I look forward to that one. So once again, thanks for listening. Siddy.